I caught my wife cheating, built a secret case against her, and destroyed both her lover and their affair with ruthless, calculated revenge. There's nothing quite like the moment you realize your entire life has been a lie. I don't mean a small lie, like someone telling you they're 5 minutes away when they're actually still in bed. No, I'm talking about the kind of lie that rips through everything you thought was real, leaving you standing there wondering how the hell you didn't see it coming. It was a regular Tuesday evening. Well, as regular as it could get with 2 little kids running around the house, making noise and causing chaos. I was in the kitchen, finishing up dinner, while my wife, Jessica, was in the living room, half watching TV, half typing away on her phone. We had been married for 8 years by then, together for over a decade, and honestly, if you'd asked me at that moment, I would have said we were okay. Sure, the past year had been rough, more arguments, more silent dinners, but I thought we were just going through a phase, like all couples do. But that night, something was different. Jessica wasn't just distant, she was practically on another planet. I could feel it in my gut, this gnawing sense that something was off. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid, but it was like a splinter in my mind that I couldn't ignore. As I set the table, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. She was smiling, but not at anything on the TV. She was smiling at her phone. My heart sank. It was the kind of smile she used to give me when we first started dating, the kind that made me feel like the only person in the world. Now, here she was, giving that same smile to her phone. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Jessica was barely eating, more focused on her phone than on the food or the conversation. What little there was of it. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just nodded, mumbling something about work being stressful. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that splinter in my mind kept digging deeper. After the kids were in bed, I decided I couldn't just let it go. I had to know. So I asked her point blank what was going on. She looked up from her phone, surprised, maybe even a little annoyed, and told me she was just tired, that I was overthinking things. But I wasn't convinced. I pressed a little harder, asking her why she'd been so distant lately, why she seemed so disconnected. That's when she put down her phone and finally looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in a long time. I saw something in her eyes that scared the hell out of me, regret. She told me she wasn't happy, that she felt like the spark between us was gone, like we were just going through the motions. I was stunned. I mean, yeah, things had been tough lately, but I thought we were still solid. I thought we were still us. But hearing her say that, it was like the ground shifted beneath my feet. We talked, or rather she talked, and I listened, too shocked to really say much. She said she loved me but wasn't sure if she was in love with me anymore. It was a lot to take in, and I didn't really know how to respond, so I just nodded and told her we'd figure it out. But deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. The way she was talking, it was like she had already made up her mind about us, like she had already checked out of the marriage. And that smile she gave her phone, it haunted me. That night, after she fell asleep, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on, something she wasn't telling me, but I had no idea just how deep the rabbit hole went. Little did I know that Tuesday night was just the beginning. The real nightmare was yet to come. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing, replaying every moment, every conversation, every little thing that might have hinted at what Jessica had just told me. I kept thinking about that smile she gave her phone. It wasn't just in my head. Something was definitely wrong, and I needed to find out what. The next day, I couldn't focus on anything. I went through the motions at work, but all I could think about was Jessica, her words from the night before, and that damn phone. I hated the way I was feeling, paranoid, suspicious, but I couldn't shake it. When I got home that evening, everything seemed normal. The kids were playing, Jessica was making dinner, but there was this tension between us that wasn't there before. We were polite, careful even, like we were both tiptoeing around a landmine that neither of us wanted to set off. After dinner, while Jessica was giving the kids a bath, I saw her phone on the kitchen counter. It was just sitting there, face down, almost like it was daring me to pick it up. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know. I grabbed the phone and, with shaky hands, unlocked it. Jessica wasn't the most secretive person, and she hadn't changed her passcode. I scrolled through her messages, feeling like a complete jerk, but at the same time, desperate for answers. And then I found it. There it was, a message thread with some guy named Adam. I didn't recognize the name, but as I started reading through their conversations, my stomach dropped. They weren't talking about work or kids or anything innocent like that. It was the kind of conversation you have with someone you're in love with, the kind you should only have with your spouse. They were exchanging flirty texts, talking about how much they missed each other and how they couldn't wait to be together again. It wasn't just one or two messages either. It was a whole history, going back weeks, maybe even months. I felt sick, like I was going to throw up right there in the kitchen. I kept scrolling, hoping, praying that it was all just some horrible misunderstanding. But the more I read, the worse it got. There were I love yous, plans for secret meetups, even talk about a future together. My hands were trembling so much that I almost dropped the phone. It was like everything I thought I knew about my life, about Jessica, was being ripped away in real time. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it all. It felt like the walls were closing in on me, like I was suffocating under the weight of what I had just discovered. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to throw the phone at her and demand to know how she could do this to me, to us, to our kids. But something stopped me. I don't know if it was fear, shock, or just the need to process what I had just learned, but I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I knew I couldn't just fly off the handle. I had to be smart about this, to figure out what I was going to do next. That night, I couldn't even look at Jessica. Every time she tried to talk to me, I just nodded or gave one-word answers. She asked if something was wrong, but I brushed it off, saying I was just tired. I could see the worry in her eyes, but she didn't push it. Maybe she thought I didn't know, or maybe she was just too caught up in whatever fantasy she was living with Adam to care. I spent the rest of the night on my phone, searching online for advice, reading through forums where people had gone through the same thing. It was like I was looking for some kind of manual on how to handle your wife's infidelity. The more I read, the more I realized I needed to keep my cool. Confronting her without a plan would only make things worse. So, I made a decision. I would gather as much information as I could, figure out my options, and then confront her when I was ready. I wasn't going to let her know that I knew. Not yet. I needed to protect myself, to protect my kids. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about my entire life, and I wasn't going to let her destroy it without a fight. As I lay in bed that night, with Jessica sleeping soundly beside me, I knew there was no going back. Whatever happened next, our lives would never be the same. All I could think about was how I was going to survive the storm that was coming. Over the next few days, I was living a double life. On the outside, I was the same old me, going to work, taking care of the kids, making small talk with Jessica like nothing was wrong. But on the inside, I was a mess. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to hold it together while my world was crumbling beneath my feet. Every time Jessica looked at me, smiled at me, or tried to kiss me, it took everything in me not to recoil. The worst part was pretending that everything was fine when all I wanted to do was scream. I kept digging every chance I got. I was on her phone, reading their messages, trying to piece together how long this had been going on. I found out that their little affair had started 6 months ago. 6 months of lies, of betrayal, of her sneaking around behind my back. They had met at some conference she attended for work, and from there it spiraled into this twisted fantasy where they were the perfect match, where he was the one who truly understood her. The more I read, the angrier I got. It wasn't just about the physical betrayal, though that was bad enough. It was the emotional connection they had. Jessica was telling this guy things she hadn't told me in years, sharing her dreams, her fears, her everything. She was confiding in him, leaning on him like he was her husband, not me. And that hurt more than I can put into words. I was furious, yes, but I was also hurt. Deeply, deeply hurt. I kept thinking back to our wedding day, to the vows we made, to the life we had built together. How could she throw all of that away for some guy she barely knew? How could she look me in the eye every day, knowing she was stabbing me in the back? It was like everything we had meant nothing to her. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed more time to process, to plan my next move. I wasn't going to just let her get away with this. I started seeing a lawyer, getting advice on what my options were. I wanted to make sure that when I confronted her, I was in the best possible position to protect myself and the kids. During this time, I also started documenting everything. I took screenshots of their messages, saved emails, even started keeping a journal of her behavior. It felt wrong, almost like I was the one betraying her, but I knew I had to do it. I couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Not when so much was at stake. One night, after the kids were in bed, Jessica was in the shower, and I found myself alone in the living room, staring at her phone on the coffee table. I knew she was still texting Adam, but I hadn't confronted her about it yet. My hands were shaking as I picked up the phone again, scrolling through their latest conversations. It was all there, plans to meet up, talking about their connection and how hard it was to hide their feelings. But then I saw something that stopped me cold. She was talking about me. Jessica had told Adam that she felt trapped in our marriage, that she didn't know how to leave without hurting the kids. She even admitted that she had thought about asking for a divorce, but was afraid of how I would react. It was like reading a script from some twisted soap opera, except it was my life, my marriage, that was being torn apart. And then she said something that nearly broke me. "I wish I had met you first." That was the moment I knew there was no saving this. Whatever we had, whatever we used to be, it was gone. She wasn't just unhappy, she was already halfway out the door. And the worst part was, she didn't even have the guts to tell me. She was waiting for the right moment, or maybe for me to find out on my own, so she wouldn't have to be the bad guy. I put the phone down, my mind racing. I felt sick to my stomach, like I had just been punched in the gut. It was over. I knew it, and deep down, I think I had known it for a while. But seeing it there in black and white made it real in a way that nothing else had. That night, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let her keep stringing me along while she played house with Adam behind my back. The next time I confronted her, it would be the last time. I was done being the fool, done pretending that we could somehow fix this. I was going to take control of the situation, not for her, not for Adam, but for me and my kids. And so, I waited. I waited for the right moment, biding my time, letting her dig her own grave, all the while knowing that the end was coming. She just didn't know it yet. I finally reached my breaking point a few days later. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where we'd usually spend time together as a family, taking the kids to the park, grabbing lunch at that little diner we liked. But this time, there was no family time. Jessica was distant, glued to her phone, probably texting Adam, pretending she was just checking emails, or scrolling through social media. The kids were playing in the living room, and I could feel the tension in the air, like a storm was about to hit. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked her to step into the kitchen, away from the kids, and with a calmness that surprised even me, I looked her in the eye and asked, "Are you having an affair?" Her reaction was immediate. Her face went pale and she didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity. I could see the gears turning in her head, like she was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still lie about. Finally she nodded, barely a movement, but it was enough. My stomach dropped and my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wasn't going to let her off easy. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady, even though I felt anything but. She hesitated again before she whispered, 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of sneaking around, of betraying everything we had built together. But it wasn't just the time that got to me. It was the way she said it, like she was confessing something trivial, not like she was admitting to tearing our family apart. I pressed her for more details, not because I wanted to hear them, but because I needed to understand just how deep this betrayal went. And then she said something that almost made me lose it. "He's my deepest emotional connection," she said, almost like she was trying to justify what she had done as if that made it okay. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emotional connection? What about our connection? What about our life, our kids, everything we had been through together? It was like nothing mattered to her anymore except this fantasy she had built up in her head. But I kept my cool. I had been preparing for this moment, and I wasn't going to let her see me break. Instead, I laid down the rules, the conditions for any chance of saving our marriage. I told her she had to cut off all contact with Adam, go to couples therapy with me, and respect the boundaries I was setting. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try, for the kids, if nothing else. Her response? She actually had the nerve to get angry, to act like I was the one being unreasonable. She said she needed to see him one last time, for closure. I couldn't believe it. Closure? What closure do you need with someone you were planning a future with behind my back? That's when I laid it out for her, plain and simple. "If he's so important to you," I said, "then pack your bags and go be with him." I think that shocked her more than anything else I had said. She looked at me, her eyes wide, like she couldn't believe I would actually stand up for myself. But I meant every word. If she was going to choose him over our family, over our kids, then I wasn't going to stick around and be her second choice. After that, she backed down, at least for the moment. She accused me of being controlling, of trying to manipulate her, but I didn't care. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to let her guilt-trip me into thinking otherwise. A few days later she showed me a message she had sent to Adam, supposedly breaking things off. But I didn't trust it, not for a second. There was something in the way she presented it, like she was trying to prove something to me, but it didn't feel genuine. I knew she would try to keep in touch with him, maybe through another phone or a secret email, but I let it go, at least for now. I had more important things to focus on, like protecting my kids and preparing for the inevitable. By the end of that conversation, I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe I would actually go through with leaving her. She thought this was just a rough patch. that we would somehow get past it, that I would forgive and forget. But I knew better. The damage was done, and there was no going back. I was already planning my next move. Not long after that confrontation, I decided it was time to speak with Jessica's father. We had always been close, and I knew he cared deeply about our kids. I felt like he deserved to know what was really going on, especially since he might be caught in the middle once everything came to light. I went to see him one evening, and we sat down in his living room, just the two of us. It was one of those quiet moments where you know the conversation you're about to have will change everything. He offered me a beer, and I took it, even though I could barely taste it through the knot in my throat. I started off by telling him how much I respected him and how important he was to me and the kids. Then I took a deep breath and explained the situation, how Jessica had been distant, the affair, everything. I was honest about my intentions. I told him I was going to file for divorce, that I couldn't stay in a marriage where trust was shattered, but that my main concern was the kids. He didn't say much at first, just listened, nodding along, his face growing more serious with every word. When I was finished, he sat back in his chair and let out a long sigh. I could tell he was processing it all, trying to make sense of how his daughter, his little girl, had gotten herself into this mess. After a few minutes of silence, he finally spoke. He told me he was sorry, that he couldn't believe Jessica had done this, and that he supported whatever decision I made. But most importantly, he assured me that he would be there for the kids no matter what. That was all I needed to hear, knowing that he would stand by them. Even as their parents' marriage fell apart, gave me some peace of mind. Jessica, on the other hand, was furious when she found out I had spoken to her father. She accused me of trying to turn him against her, of airing our dirty laundry, but I didn't care. She was more concerned about her image, about keeping everything under wraps, than she was about the damage she'd done. That only solidified my resolve. I spent the next few days getting everything in order. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering all the documents I needed, and mentally prepared myself for what was to come. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting my kids from the fallout of this disaster. I had to make sure they would be okay, that their lives wouldn't be completely turned upside down. And then came the moment to tell Jessica. I handed her the divorce papers one evening, after the kids were asleep. She looked at them like they were a bomb about to go off, completely shocked that I had actually gone through with it. She had never thought I'd really leave her, not after everything we had been through, not after all the years together. She started crying, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But then I remembered all those nights I spent lying awake, wondering what had gone wrong, why she had chosen someone else over our family. I remembered the hurt in our kids' eyes when they asked why Mommy and Daddy were always fighting, and that sympathy disappeared. In the days that followed, I could see the reality setting in for her. She was losing the life we had built together, and it was all because of her choices. She tried to act like she was the victim, but I wasn't buying it. I knew better now. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I was done playing her games. The divorce was happening, and I was moving on, with or without her cooperation. The day of our daughter's birthday party arrived, and to say I was dreading it would be an understatement. Jessica had insisted on hosting it at our old house, the one we had shared as a family before everything fell apart. She wanted to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, and I agreed to that. But what I didn't agree to, what made my blood boil, was that she had invited Adam, yes, him, to the party. I mean, can you believe that? She actually thought it was okay to bring her lover to our daughter's birthday, like he was just another guest, like nothing had happened. It was the most disrespectful thing I could imagine, and it was a slap in the face, not just to me, but to our whole family. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to play along with her twisted idea of normal. I wasn't going to put on a fake smile and pretend like everything was fine while that man was in my house, around my kids. But I also wasn't going to cause a scene in front of everyone, especially not on our daughter's special day. She deserved better than that. Instead, I came up with a plan. I decided I would go to the house before the party started, drop off our daughter's gift, and leave before anyone else arrived. I knew it would send a message, a clear one, that I wasn't okay with this situation. And I had one more thing in mind, something that would really make Jessica and Adam think twice about the choices they were making. When I got to the house, the air was thick with tension, but I stayed calm. I knocked on the door and Jessica answered, her face going pale when she saw me standing there with the gift. I could see Adam in the background trying to avoid my gaze, probably hoping I wouldn't make a scene. But I wasn't there for a confrontation. I was there to reclaim a little bit of my dignity, to remind them both that I wasn't some pushover they could walk all over. I handed Jessica the gift, a beautiful dollhouse our daughter had been asking for all year, and told her to give it to her when the party started. Then I turned to leave, but not before dropping my final surprise. I had prepared a short letter, something simple but with a clear message. I told Jessica that, while I couldn't be there, I hoped she would take a moment to read the letter aloud before the cake was cut. I walked out without looking back, got in my car, and drove to my parents' house, where the kids were supposed to come later. As I drove, I imagined the scene unfolding. Jessica, confused but curious, opening the letter in front of Adam and the other guests. The letter was addressed to our daughter, but it was really meant for everyone in that room, especially for the two people who had caused so much pain. In the letter, I wrote about how much I loved our daughter, how proud I was of her, and how I wished I could be there to celebrate with her. But then I added a line about how sometimes, when people make bad choices, they lose the chance to share in special moments. I ended by telling her that, no matter what, I would always be there for her and her brother, that I would never let them feel unloved or unwanted. I didn't need to be there to know the impact that letter would have. It wasn't about causing drama, it was about setting the record straight, about showing that I was strong enough to stand up for myself and my kids, even in the face of betrayal. Later that night, when the kids were back at my parents' house, I asked them about the party. They said it was fun, but they didn't mention Adam at all. I knew then that my plan had worked. I had taken a stand, and it was clear that Jessica and Adam were shaken by it. They had crossed a line, and now they were feeling the consequences. As for me, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had done what I needed to do, and I was ready to move forward. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and there were still plenty of challenges ahead, but I was done letting them control my life. I was done playing by their rules. From that day on, I focused on building a new life for myself and my kids, a life where we didn't have to pretend or put up with lies, a life where we could finally be free.